Hey guys, in previous videos I've often talked about these little watt meters, like this kilowatt meter here, and maybe a less expensive one that I actually like a little bit better than this kilowatt meter. And these things run from $20 to maybe $50 for something like this. They're really handy for giving you like an idea of how much power, say, your refrigerator uses in a 24-hour period, maybe a television, a computer, anything you might want to run. You can plug into this, run it for a period of time, and then find out how much power it actually consumes. Well, in today's video, we're going to take a look at a product that does this on a much larger scale. And that is this guy right here. I picked this up on Amazon. This is not a sponsored video, by the way. I bought this. It's about $165. And I'm probably going to have to buy a second one of these. I'm going to start with one and make sure it gives me the kind of information that I want. But this is the Gen 2 View from Emporia. And it comes with 16 of these little CT clamps that allow you to monitor current up to 50 amps of current on 16 different circuits. And I think that's going to help me really identify as I start planning for maybe a larger solar implementation and how much battery capacity I might need for there. Knowing on much more greater detail, other than just a couple of key circuits that I've already checked with something like this, having that sort of whole house view into that data, I think is going to be very handy. And this is going to be should be really easy to install. In fact, let me open it up here and see what we get inside the box. So it looks like you get the little main wireless module. Now this connects to, I believe, your Wi-Fi network. Not sure if there's anything else in here. Yeah, looks like that's all that's there. So maybe a little antenna that gets attached, and then you've got all these little barrel connectors here for the individual clamps. So 16 of them. So it looks like these are the individual accessories. So these are the main clamps. It looks like they're much larger, and these can connect to your main inputs, as I said, your main 120 two phases that come in to your service panel. And it looks like there's also a little power cable here to connect. So I'll have to figure out how all that works. I'll probably have to tie that into an existing circuit somewhere. And then you get a couple of boxes here. I'm not going to open all these, but you get a couple of these in there that are 50 amp clamps or sensors. So these clamp onto your individual, the black leads going into your breakers. You clamp those onto there, and it will tell you, continually monitor and report to the app how much power those individual circuits are using. So let's take this down to the panel and get this thing installed and figure out what kind of data we can get with it. All right, now I'm going to install this on a sub panel. My main panel is in another part of the basement here, and I have shut off the breakers to the sub panel. So I have removed all of the power from this panel. So now I'm gonna go ahead, I've got all the breakers switched in the off position, just so that when I resume power, I can bring them on one at a time. I'm gonna go ahead and take the cover off and we can start the install. All right, now I do have a couple things I want to point out. There are 16 clamps in here, so I can monitor 16 circuits. If I'm monitoring a 240 volt circuit, which I will be because I'm very interested to find out how much power my electric water heater actually uses, because we're going to do more about that in a subsequent video to find out if we can actually improve that, reduce the power consumption on that water heater by adding a timer. And we're going to find out how much of a difference that actually makes. But if I am monitoring a 240 volt circuit, I only have to clamp one of those leads, one of the 120 volt leads, one of the phases, and then I can use a doubler in the Emporia app to effectively give me the actual power consumption. So I don't have to use two clamps for a 240 volt circuit. That's kind of cool. Now the other thing I want to point out, this is a sub panel, as I mentioned. So I have basically de-energized the entire thing by turning off the breakers in my main panel. Now if this were a main panel, these two black leads on the top here, these are my two 120 volt phases incoming. Those would still be live on the main panel. So just turning off that big breaker in the top of the main panel doesn't de-energize these top leads. And you need to be aware of that, because that can be very dangerous if you are careless. So anytime you're working with electricity, if you're not comfortable, you should hire an electrician to do this. But this is a very easy install. If you take some common sense precautions, there's no reason why you can't put a system like this in place. Now, I also have over here, as you can see, my 10 circuit manual transfer switch installed. So I got a lot of extra wires in here already. And so it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to keep this from being a complete rat's nest. but I'm going to do my best to maybe clean it up a little bit. Now, one of the things I did is I went through the instructions to see exactly what was involved. It's very straightforward. The app actually walks you through it. And one of the things that that you need to do is you need to be able to provide power. So there's a little power cable that I showed you previously, and you do need to be able to connect that into the ground and in the neutral bar, which in my case is right over here. And then the power leads are actually, it's monitoring both phases from that power supply. I'm not sure exactly why it does that, but it does tell you you need to connect power to a stacked set of breakers here. So there's two actual power leads. I think probably a red and a black would be my guess. And they have to be stacked, and the reason for that is because they clearly want them on separate phases. And that's how these are arranged, obviously. So like phase 1, phase 2, phase 1, phase 2, et cetera, et cetera. Now you can actually kind of create a pigtail and connect those to existing circuits, and that would be fairly straightforward and easy to do. But I actually do have a couple of just simple Eaton 15 amp breakers here, and I'm going to add that to my left side here so that I have dedicated breakers for that. You really don't need to do that, but since I happen to have a couple of breakers from a previous project, I'm just going to use these, and that way I don't have to pigtail kind of splice some existing connections. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is add these breakers, and then we'll get to the clamp configuration here. All right, got the 2 extra breakers installed. I'm going to actually need to knock those out, obviously, in the cover, since the knockouts are still present in the cover because these were open before. So got to do that before I put the cover back on, but we're a long way from that. So let me go ahead and get these other bits here set up. Now I will say that these CT clamps do have a direction to them, and you have to be very aware of that. And it's marked on there, and it'll actually tell you, if you can make that out, get out of the shot here. But on the bottom there's an arrow that shows breaker. And basically what that's telling you is that's the direction the breakers need to be in. So the way they've set this is pretty nice. The cables basically will point outward from the breaker. You'll never have them pointing inward to kind of make a mess. So they do have this set out in a logical way, but you do need to take care to make sure that these are installed in the proper orientation. So I'm going to put this one on the first one here. Yeah, if this were a main panel, these top ones are live, and you do not want to take chances with that. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up there for now and put the other one on. All right, so again, making sure that the breaker is in the right direction. All right, so that's good. Oh, actually they do give you a couple of pigtails here and a couple of wire nuts in the accessory box. Now it does have a little thing for the antenna to stick out. So it's going to have to come out the bottom somewhere, because that's where the main module is going to be. So I need to make sure that I have a good place for this. I may just stick it out the bottom like that. So I'm going to use one of these little knockouts here, and it does have a little ceiling plug there, and should be no problem. They say you can actually install this behind a wall if you need to. So if you have a flush mounted panel, you could just stick this through there and leave this in the wall cavity if you have room to do that. So yeah, so that's something to be aware of. All right, let me go ahead and pop out one of these knockouts. I think I'll probably just use this guy right here. There we go, one knockout, knocked out. Go ahead and put the antenna through that. And it does snap right in there real nice, so pretty good. I like how easy that is. All right, this is where it's going to get to be a rat's nest. And again, I think I'm just going to leave these things twisty tied until I'm ready to try to clean it up. So should be pretty straightforward. Now I did take a little picture of my panel, and I mapped out the circuits that I want, but this will help me keep them straight when I connect them. I've got them numbered 1 to 16, so that when I connect them to the main wireless unit, that I keep them all straight. So again, these are going to be breaker to the inside, and the little wire pigtail out here will go to the outside. So I'm just going to add one of these to each of these little setups here, and it just goes around the black connector. This is why you definitely want to have the power off when you're doing this, because you have to get your fingers back in there pretty good. I think I'm going to stagger them like that, kind of zigzaggy. And you can see I've got, I don't know if you can make this out, I do have some red wire in there, some red leads going in instead of black. Those are the ones that are mapped over to my manual transfer switch, in case you were wondering. All right, I'm going to stop talking and just get through the rest of this. All right, now I've got to do the power part. If we undo the little power harness here, you can see we've got 4 different wires. We've got a blue and a white, and then a red and a black. I need to go double check the app to make sure that these are going in the right place. I'm gonna go ahead and record my screen so you can see. If I go back here, you can see it's really nice. It kind of describes here, shows me what I need to do as far as connecting the power. It kind of explains what the leads do. And then it gives me the option of picking how many of these 200 amp CT clamps I'm using. I have 2 of them, so I will select that option. And then it asks you whether you're going to use empty breakers or if you don't have empty breakers. So if you don't have empty breakers, as I said, it's going to walk you through kind of pigtailing a couple of open circuits, but they need to be stacked circuits, so they're on different phases apparently. And so I have empty breakers, so I'm going to go ahead and select that option. And let's see here, 2 empty breakers and 2 CTs. All right, secure the white and blue wires from the wire harness to the neutral. So the blue actually doesn't go to ground, goes to the neutral bus bar, the same as the white. So I can do that. And then secure the red wire, the black and red wires from the harness to each of the hot leads from each breaker. So it doesn't really matter, I don't think, which one goes where. All right, so let me go ahead and connect that. All right, so the blue and the white go to the neutral bus bar, which is, in my case, is over here on the right. Probably should have done this before I did all of these clamps, because now I gotta weed through those. All right, gave them a quick little tug just to make sure that they are not going to pop out on me. All right, and then I need to attach the red and black over to these guys. Doesn't really matter which ones. All right, I got those in nice and snug. There is no visible bare copper, so that's good. They're all back in again. Okay, now we can make the connections to the main control box. All right, and the numbers are on the back, so you can see what number they are based on their location in the back. Got to make sure you get them in the right spots, otherwise you're not monitoring what you think you're monitoring. All right, so we are fully wired up. And this is about as ridiculous as it could possibly be. All right, so I'm going to, before I try to clean up all these wires, I'm going to go ahead and turn everything back on, and then we're going to connect to the box, set up the individual circuit configurations, and make sure that we are able to track power properly through these various clamps. And once we know that everything is working, then I'll come back and try to clean this up and make this a bit more manageable. All right, I've just turned the power back on to the sub panel here. I'm going to go ahead and individually power these circuits. All right, so I should have power back now to the box, and I do see some lights inside there. So let me go ahead and start in the app and make sure that I can find the device. Going directly to setup, there's the device. All right, now it wants my password for my Wi-Fi. I assume we're going to connect to the Wi-Fi, connect to the cloud. All right, it's asking me a few questions. Does your system use solar or other energy generation? I'm going to say no, not right now. Maybe in the near future. Now you can actually nest multiple view systems if you want. So in my case, I'm obviously putting this on a sub panel. So I'm going to give this one sub panel as a name. And you can actually nest these. So if I install another system, which I very likely will, on the main panel, I will nest this one within this to the main panel so that I can aggregate all of my energy consumption in a meaningful way that makes it easier to work with, rather than trying to look at 2 separate sets of data and then try to add them up in my head. All right, looks like it's doing a firmware update. It says it should take no longer than 3 minutes. Cue the Jeopardy theme. Yeah, let's not do that. All right, it says I'm all done. So, okay, show me my energy. Let's click on that. And I've got not a whole lot going on right now. You can see one of the first things I'm going to have to do is go in and name my circuits, because I don't know what circuit 9 is. So I'm going to use my little handy dandy cheat sheet, go up to my office and set this up so I can make more sense of it. So let me go do that. All right, I have got the app all set up, got everything named, and I need to now start to shut power off again so that I can go clean up this rat's nest and try to get this at least somewhat organized and get the panel cover back on. But we are good. We're collecting live data. I can already tell this is going to be extremely helpful. But let's jump forward in time, at least a couple of weeks, so we have plenty of data to work with and take a look and see what we've got and what kinds of insights that we might be able to learn from this. All right, so I've got just shy of 2 weeks worth of data now here on this energy monitoring system. Let's dive into the app and kind of see what information that gives us. So when we look at the home screen here, you can see it defaults on that bottom little strip under seconds on that lower left-hand corner. And I can basically move that along to minutes, hours, days, and weeks. I can do months and years, but it's not going to really show me anything different since I've only had it for a couple of weeks. But in each one of these, it's basically saying, for example, if I put it on hour, it's aggregating all of the power consumption on each individual circuit for that hour and adding it up and giving me one number. And if I put it on seconds, which again is the default, it's basically showing me at the current time right now in like real time what is consuming the most power. And I can see falling at the top of the list right now is the kitchen outlets and grow lights. My wife has a pretty large set of grow lights up there, and you can see they're consuming just under 500 watts. So that's a pretty big consumer right there. And my furnace is actually not really running right now. So literally pulling 6 watts on the furnace. We can flip through that and look at any particular time range. So if we're looking at seconds right now, as we are, you have that little green thing, that tab on the top of that, just above that. If I click on that, you can see it's currently set to right now, and that's currently pulling data every second. But you can slide that back and kind of move that back in time a little ways if you want to. And you can do that with any of the ranges here. So if I go to minutes, I can look at the current minutes, and again, it's now adding up all of the samples of every second into that 1 minute to give me a total power. So if I go into hours, and you keep your eye on that top sorting, you're going to see when I hit day, all of a sudden my furnace is the chief power consumer, which kind of makes sense, right? But if I go to week, you'll see, and this is interesting, and this is where it starts revealing stuff that's pretty helpful to know. You can see my master bedroom is actually outstripping my furnace by about 50% for the week in terms of power consumption. Now, how can that be? Well, it's been super cold out here in the single digits, and our master bedroom is above the garages, which probably has the least amount of insulation because it's got cold garage beneath, and it also happens to be furthest away from the furnace. So we've been resorting to an electric radiant oil heater for several nights. And I was kind of worried about how expensive that might be. And this tells me that it's actually quite expensive. It's actually, in the few days that we were running it, generating about 50% more power consumption than the furnace for the entire house, which is kind of staggering when you think about it. So if I actually drill down into, let me go into days here, actually go into hours, and I'll go into that master bedroom. And if you look at the plot here, you can see some pretty dramatic differences in the peaks. So if I scroll over here to these taller peaks, you can see where we're running that oil heater overnight, and it's pretty consistently pulling around 1,300 watt hours every single hour. And that's a lot of power. And then what happened here, where basically the smaller set of peaks, I went actually and bought on Amazon a heating pad for the mattress instead of an electric blanket, something we just heat the mattress up with, put the comforter on top of it, it holds all that heat in. So we kind of preheated it. I think I turned it on here, just around 10 p.m. And then we dialed it down to a kind of a low level overnight, so it wasn't really drawing but maybe 45 watts continuous overnight, so very low heat. And man, what a dramatic difference. If I go back to that day calculation, and I can see that when I was using that oil heater, I was regularly pulling 15,000 watt hours every day from that stupid oil heater. And now that I've switched it over to that electric mattress pad, only a minuscule 418 watt hours to run that mattress pad all night long. So not bad at all. That's a huge trade-off, and it was quite tolerable. So big energy savings there. Let me show you another one just as an example. If I scroll over here and look at the dishwasher, you can see if I click on dishwasher, look at the difference in the peaks. Each one of these represent a cycle of for dishwasher cycle. And what this tells me is here, I was curious, back on the 13th, I ran the dishwasher cycle, including that heated dry function, because that's what we typically run. Well, that pulls 1.5 kilowatts or 1500 watt hours. And I tried another cycle the next time around without the heated dry function. I just opened it when it was done and let it air dry. And I pulled less than half of that amount of power at only 668 watt hours. And so that's another area where that's kind of hard to know what the difference really is for that kind of thing. And using one of those little handheld watt meters, because your dishwasher is usually hardwired or maybe in a plug that's underneath the cabinet or something like that. Very hard to get to. But this makes it really easy to see over time kind of what those changes are. Yeah, so I think if you're in the market to maybe considering, so I think if you're considering looking at solar or something in the future, you really do want to have a pretty good handle on what your power consumption is and where you can save money. And I think this allows you to make little changes to your power consumption habits that can have a fairly dramatic impact on your overall power usage. And another thing, this is something else I would point out. I was actually thinking about doing a video on my electric water heater, which is a newer one, but it's still an electric water heater, so it is a power consumption beast. I wanted to see if I installed a timer on there, a $50 to $60 timer, and maybe just didn't run it every night, like shut it down so it wouldn't come on between, say, after 11 p.m. until about 6 a.m. or something like that. Maybe I would save money enough to offset the cost and on the timer. But what I discovered was actually, if I go into here and actually look at hours, when you scroll down, you can see that a lot of times it's not running at all. And in fact, for the most part, especially in a household where it's just me and my wife, and I imagine this probably be a much different calculus going on here if I had a family of 5 or something, where at a lot more people using showers and stuff like that, a lot more loads of laundry, a lot more dishwasher cycles. All that's going to cause us to run more. But in my case, if I look at, like, just for example here, I'm going to put the cursor at 12 or 11 p.m. I got no power consumption all the way until it doesn't even kick on the first time until 10 a.m. and where I'm pulling 2,500 watts. So, and that actually, as I scroll through the history, is the case for pretty much every overnight period. My hot water heater isn't even kicking on. So I'm not even going to bother with that video, because in my case, I wouldn't be able to show you any savings at all. And I wouldn't have known that had I not done that analysis with this app. So yeah, anyway, I think this is a pretty handy thing to do. I am going to buy that second Gen 2 kit for my main panel because I want to get everything in here. And by the way, they do have the ability to tie in things like EV chargers or even electric vehicles. They sell smart plugs and thermometers, thermostats, things like that, that you can monitor with this app as well. And kind of enables you to integrate all that in one convenient place. So pretty cool. I'm very happy with the app. Again, not sponsored. I did buy this with my own money on Amazon, and I'll put a link to the one that I bought below if that's helpful to you. And you can go check it out if you think it's something you might be interested in. So hey, if you found anything at all in the video helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you consider clicking that like button for me. I'd really appreciate that. Maybe consider subscribing if you're not already a subscriber. And yeah, thanks a lot for joining me on this video. I do hope you will consider joining me for the next one. Until then, have fun out there.